Well, Broncos country, what is poppin', guys? Man, they always say the NFL season never sleeps, right? And that's true here in Broncos country, man, as there seems to be quite a bit of juicy drama between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. But there is no drama between me and my good friend Alex with Kodiak Broncos. How you doing, brother? What's going on, man?
I'm doing amazing. Man, usually we don't get on in the middle of the day, but for this sort of story, it felt like we needed to get on and really
Yeah.
clear the air because this has currently started an absolute firestorm within the Broncos
Yeah.
media, and it started an absolute firestorm within the fan base today. Even in my Broncos group chats, it's been absolutely on fire today. So I can't wait to talk about it with you. And it's that Bo Nix, it seems to be absolutely livid with Sean Payton today. Okay, we could not watch the press conference. We could not hear his tone. We just have to go off of what we hear, what has been reported from the beat reporters. But from what we have heard from 104.3 and from what we have heard from Zach Stevens, this was not a planned press conference. Bo Nix
Mhm.
initially went to the media today at 1 p.m. and it was like, that's when it was scheduled for him to talk around 3 ish. So
Yep.
this was brought upon by himself.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me
Inter-
because, yeah,
yeah,
I don't know.
interesting, man. I mean, yeah, I think it's crazy, and kind of one thing. I mean, I'm still waiting for the full quotes of what Bo Nix had said in the presser. We heard like snippets of it on the radio and stuff, but he just said he basically made, well, I guess he delivered good news in terms of the injury. He said 4 to 6 weeks. It was a clean break, nothing predisposed, which is kind of contradicting what Sean Payton had said before. But I guess kind of to rewind it. So what had happened originally, right after the Buffalo game, Sean Payton came out for that second press conference. And he had said, Bo just got done telling me that this is his third surgery. He had one at Auburn. He won in high school and one at Auburn. And Sean Payton joked, and it was a joke. People still think he didn't. Like, if we didn't know if we would have known that, then we wouldn't have drafted you, to kind of like lighten up the mood a little bit. So that was like, okay, he just said that's straight from Bo's mouth. And then I guess that really irked Bo today, because Bo had said, I don't really think that he should be talking about how many surgeries I've had, and I don't know why he would know that information. So it's either Bo never told Sean Payton that, and Sean Payton just like said it because he knew about it, or Bo told Sean in confidence that he wouldn't come out and tell the media. But I don't know. I mean, what was your initial thoughts on that? Just kind of hearing it for the first time, really.
I mean, that's interesting. I feel like of all the people that would know the medical information about Bo Nix, I feel like it would be the coach and the scouts and the front office that did extensive work to the point where they felt good about spending their first round pick on him. And if you do me a favor and pull up the screen share right here, because a lot of people in the comments are asking what specifically did Bo Nix or what specifically did Sean Payton say. Um, so basically, Tyler Columbus here on Twitter seems to think that this was a direct response to Sean Payton's comments. So what Sean Payton had said yesterday was that it was going to be a matter of when, not if, but when was Bo Nix going to break his ankle, which was really, really interesting because, I mean, I'm not a sports medicine doctor, but I don't know. That doesn't sound good. That's not a good thing to hear about your quarterback. It's not a good thing to hear that, your quarterback has chronic damage to one of his ligaments, to one of his bones, whatever. So that's not something you want to hear. But then Bo Nix claps back at him, says, "Nope, no, that was completely wrong. That was a simple break, easy surgery, 4 to 6 weeks." And then Bo Nix also said Sean shouldn't say how many surgeries I've had because he doesn't truly know. He doesn't truly know how many surgeries he's had. But then again, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like, how many surgeries have you had? That's not really, I get it in the NFL. Like, I get it, but I feel like that's something that's not like a secret based on how much stuff is out there, based on,
Hmm.
trust me, these fantasy football doctors, they are crazy in the modern day. They can
Yeah.
look back at your medical history. They know your medical history better than you do if you're in the NFL.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I feel like this is not private information, but also, how many ankle surgeries have you had? I feel like, I could go out to dinner with Mark and be like, oh man, how many surgeries have you had throughout your day? But I guess in the NFL, it's a little bit different because, jobs are contingent on health, careers are contingent on health, whatever. So I think that's just part of what's getting lost in the sauce here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I would be absolutely floored if they didn't know how many, about these ankle surgeries. I mean, one of the guys that I follow, Dr. Jesse Morse, he's one of the fantasy doctors, and I followed him, really when he was kind of early on Twitter. And I mean, he has a website that he put together called Injury Experts, and they have all of that information. Just to kind of show that here. I'll pull this screen share up. Um, I don't know if you guys can see that. It's probably a little bit small.
We can see it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but it
it's small.
essentially, I'll try to zoom in. But essentially, what it says or what it shows is that like, um, in September of 2017, he had a left ankle fracture. There's no details. And then in November of 2021, he had a right ankle fracture. So it's his other ankle. No details, required surgery. And then he had a little procedure 2 days later on the right foot slash ankle. Sometimes they'll do this, two different ones. And then they had the back surgery, which he talked about, that happened with the fracture. No surgery. He played with everything. And then he had we knew that he had arthroscopic surgery on a pre-existing ankle injury that bothered him during the rookie season, but it doesn't say the right or the left. So, I mean, if this doctor's got it, I think it's pretty. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if Sean Payton and the whole staff and everybody didn't know about this before the draft. But it's interesting because I look at it like maybe what really irked Bo Nix is like now that there's going to be this label on him that like he's injury prone or something that should be worried about moving forward, because that's kind of what the narrative started to come out. Like, is it something to be concerned about? I mean, I know I was actually getting ready to make a video about that exact thing this week. And then all of a sudden this happened. But so maybe it's just like he didn't want to have any additional like pressure or unnecessary questions that he was going to have to answer to that, weren't really fair in his eyes. So he kind of wanted to clear the air there. Very similarly to how the reports that he was really mad about Sean Payton for like saying, I think he's a top 5 quarterback in this league, and kind of putting all that pressure on him before the season started. So, definitely different personalities, right? Overall, but yeah, it's wild, man. I mean, I don't know. I think the fact that this is happening at this particular time is not from a timing standpoint good, but I mean, what else? I know we're getting a lot of information in real time, so I'm just curious, kind of what you think, and do you feel like this is a big, a kind of a big thorn in their relationship moving forward, or you think it's something that they'll be able to clear the air about?
I mean, it's something that they'll be able to clear the air about just simply because we know how Bo Nix likes to be coached. Okay. This is like a husband and a wife that, they fight sometimes in publicly, and sometimes you see it. Sometimes it gets put under a microscope. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they have their pillow talks and they love each other, and it's completely fine at the end of the day. That being said, I understand why Bo Nix is a little pissed off. Okay. Because whether it's fair or not, next year, if he has to miss time, like somebody could with an ankle injury in particular, some people could be like, you know what, he's injury prone. You know what, you saw it with J.K. Dobbins this past year. Okay, fair or not, he hasn't necessarily been the most available running back this year, but it's not because this was something predisposed. Like he just got injured on a dirty play, and that's just the reality of the situation. It was a dirty hip drop tackle that he couldn't do anything about, and it's just the unfortunate reality of the NFL. And
Yeah.
I think it's crazy because Bo Nix has been available for every game that we've had, that he's had the potential to play as a Broncos quarterback, even through a fractured back, even through all those injuries that he had during his rookie year that he played through, except for this past weekend in the conference championship game. And so, yeah, I just think that's why Bo Nix has kind of a right to be a little pissed off at Sean Payton for being like, well, this was going to happen. It's if not when. First of all, I don't know who told Sean Payton that. I think it was a really, really stupid question by the reporter, too. I don't know who asked that, but, asking Sean Payton, are you concerned about the ankle injuries going forward? I think it was a stupid response by Sean Payton, too. And so
Well, how did he
ultimately,
respond? How did he respond to that? I don't
well,
recall.
I think I don't even remember, like, to be completely honest, but yeah, I don't know. It takes 3 seconds to search up and see
Yeah,
his
go look at it.
entire.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had it in front of you.
Yeah, no, no, no. But it takes 3 seconds to search up and find Bo Nix's entire injury history. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know. That's just a little interesting, but yeah, I don't know. It's just a little messy right now, and ultimately, yeah, once again, this is I think a good embodiment of Sean Payton and Bo Nix's relationship. Okay, where you get some pushback, you get some fire from your quarterback. It's just two dudes who are ultra competitive, and just want to do everything in the best interest of the football team. And now you've got Bo Nix going public, being like, no, 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 forget everything that my coach said yesterday. I called all the media members in here because I want to throw two middle fingers in the air to my coach.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like when I look at it, I try to think to myself, like, I, I just don't believe that Sean wasn't told that by the uh, doctors, because I feel like if there's no reason he would make that up at all. I think he was told that, but I think what really irked Bo is that it was shared,
Yeah.
because that's not really information that the public should know, and for the concern that it could cause, because I certainly was concerned about it too. So I think it was a lot more of that, and he just kind of wanted to come out and said, 4 to 6 weeks, it's going to be good. Initial reports from Mike Kliss said 3 to 4 months. So regardless, all the reports say he's going to be back for minicamp and all that, but it was weird. And then this all comes on the heel of this tweet from Chris Thomason that David shared in the Discord too. And this one was interesting if you guys are able to see this, but it's basically saying, Chris Thomason had talked to Joe Lombardi and said, Sean decided to move on. I don't think it's ever a surprise. You could tell he was in one of those moods where he felt some changes need to be made. And I guess he decided one of those was me. So this could be a salty coordinator. And he goes on and says, I've been around him long enough to kind of read the tea leaves. So he could be a really salty coordinator, or it could just be like Sean was just pissed, irritated about a whole lot of things, and maybe the emotional, the fact that the season ended and the way that it ended, it caused Sean to just kind of go off the rails on a few different things, not just how he reacted around Joe Lombardi, but maybe regarding this Bo situation too.
Yeah, no, and what's interesting is that Sean Payton's not one to just make rash decisions, okay? You know what could have been you know what easily could have been done that he never did? He could have fired Vance Joseph after that 70-20 game, after we allowed 70 points, and that could have been a uh, move that he could have made, and a lot of people in the national media and the local media probably would have applauded him for that. And he
Mhm.
never made that move. So Sean Payton, yes, he is prone to, being emotional, but he's not one to just make these rash decisions. Like, how many times did we see Levi Wallace get cooked over and over and over and over again until we threw Chris Abrams drain in the game? Okay. And these decisions don't just go to the football field. Like, he could have very easily fired George Payton after his first year as a head coach and been like, why? I can't believe you put this roster around me and I dragged it to 8-9. He could have easily done all that, but he doesn't do that. Okay. He's not one of
Mhm.
these guys that makes irrational decisions. So ultimately, that's just really interesting. But, I think a lot of people, talking about Joe Lombardi specifically, I haven't really shared my thoughts. I know you did, but, it seems like he's just venturing into the fact that he knows that his time, he needs to rely more on his staff. Okay. David talked about it in the Discord. Sean Payton, he's a master at self scouting. Okay. He's not averse to understanding what's going wrong with this team. And, there were a lot of issues, late subs, the basement floor of this offense for a lot of these quarters. There were a lot of times where this offense looked completely inoperable, but I don't know, just going back to this situation, I don't know, maybe it's just a blend of, the pressure of the season being over. Maybe it's just Sean Payton being irritated that his call that he is still, you could tell it still bothers him to this day. Maybe it's still just a little bit of that. And maybe it's just still to go for it on 4th and 1 and, run a bootleg. I think, you know what? Maybe there's just a lot hanging over the cloud of Sean Payton right now to where he's just like not feeling his greatest or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, the Joe Lombardi firing for me was only surprising really because I just felt like they were both kind of connected at the hip. But it makes sense. I mean, he I don't really know what contributions he makes to this team. He's not even considered the pass game coordinator, because that's Davis Webb, and then he's not even considered the run game coordinator because that's Zach Streif. So it's like, what do you do now? Obviously, he can still oversee all of that. My guess is that Sean Payton probably decided that he was going to need a shakeup in the staff earlier in the year, like several weeks before he ultimately did it. And I believe that even if we went to the Super Bowl and we won the Super Bowl, I think he still probably would have done it. Um, who knows? But yeah, it's just weird how this is all kind of coming in all at once, and Vic Chin here says maybe not tell your opponent that Bo was hurt right away. Give him time to prepare for Stiddy. You can't really do
Mm,
that for a couple reasons.
mm,
Firstly, Sean even said it in that presser. He said, I didn't want to wait until Monday. I couldn't tell the whole team today. And there's no way that it was going to not get leaked before then. So they were going to know. And then our opponent played, well, the teams that played the next day, I mean, the Texans and Pats played the next day. They didn't even know, they were not worried about that until at least Monday anyway. So I don't think that really made much of a decision. But yeah, just wanted to kind of clear that up. David Youngkin says, will Webb call plays next season? Maybe we could talk a little bit about the OC a little bit.
Yeah, just going back to would you mind highlighting that last comment real quick about maybe not telling your opponent that Bo was hurt right away? First of all, I
Oh, yeah.
think what's it called? I think first of all, you run the risk of so many things if you're not like fair with your injuries, fair with your like whatever. First of all, Sean Payton said he didn't want the team to hear about it from an agent, which I think is completely valid because he could have heard about it from an agent or some beat reporter on Twitter, and all of them probably did hear about it from beat reporter on Twitter. But ultimately, he wanted to go to the podium and say that. But second of all, gambling is now baked into this league. Players are being pressured to play hurt. It's not like the NHL where there's no discourse or no what's it called? How do I put this? There's no punishment for not reporting injuries. Okay. You have to be transparent. And that's something that the NFL very, very heavily values within their
Mm-hmm.
injury evaluation. I get what you're saying, Vic Chin, but the consequences, if you had stayed hush hush about that, were pretty substantial and potentially punishable by the NFL. But regardless, will Webb call plays next season? Will Webb call plays next season? That's a little interesting to me because honestly, I I'm not like it's not something where I'm like, yeah, we can't do this. We can absolutely do this. And a lot of people said that Sean Payton needs help with his play calling at some points this year. Now, granted, I was never one of those people. I think you don't luck into being the highest points per game offensive coordinator or head coach in NFL history. And that's what Sean Payton currently is. Okay. You don't average around 30 points a game by accident. Okay. So I understand a lot of people were upset with a lot of the timing, the sequencing, or whatever of a lot of our plays this year. But, it's not guaranteed to be an upgrade necessarily. But what it is guaranteed to do, it is guaranteed to protect that one of your rising stars within your building who ultimately will probably at some point be your head coach. I think, he's being groomed currently to be the head coach when Sean Payton ultimately decides it's done. And you know what? It's not a bad idea. It's really, really not a bad idea. What are
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts about it? Because I know a lot of people said, Davis Webb should call plays. And a lot of that was just off the backs of a preseason game where we absolutely blew the brakes off the 3-14 Arizona Cardinals backups. But what do you think about it?
Well, first, I want to address this TW. We addressed it earlier. You can probably start it over from the beginning if you wanted to catch up on it or want to recap everything. But there's definitely some juice going on. In terms of, I think that at least what we do know is Sean Payton is open to the idea of giving up play calling duties, which I think is significant. I agree with you. I think that you can't just forget about the fact that Sean Payton is a very experienced and extremely successful play caller, not just head coach. And you had mentioned that the highest points per game in NFL history with as many games as he's coached. So yeah, I mean he's really accomplished there, but it's showing that he's at least open to it. You also saw from the I think it was Ian Rappaport or Palacero, one of the guys said that Sean Payton really wanted Joe Brady to come here be the OC potentially with play calling duties as well. It could be a BS report, but it's a pretty good source. So at least he's open to it, and maybe it's because he just feels like it's he. If I think if there's anybody that he trusts to be able to call plays, it's guys like Joe Brady, who he obviously brought into the league, and Davis Webb, who he's been with for the last 3 years to do so. So if he ultimately wants to do that, I think you could always revert back to Sean Payton calling plays. I really like what Kansas City does in terms of like they brought back Eric Bieniemy, and when I was reading into that, like why would they bring him in if he doesn't really call plays? He actually is a significant play caller. Like sometimes he'll call plays strictly on third downs and strictly for red zone. That's what he focuses on the entire week. Like these are our third down plays, these are the red zone plays, and it's game plan specific. that I like if it's a little bit more of Sean can call the offense, and then maybe you can give veto power to Davis Webb on third downs or in the red zone, or vice versa. So, I mean, I'm open to it if Sean thinks that it's going to help him be better prepared. It's going to help him make more rational decisions in certain parts of the game. I mean, who knows? But I definitely don't think it would just be with anybody. I think if Davis Webb were to get the job, it would probably be with the understanding that play calling comes with it, because he could certainly get a better opportunity elsewhere, even if he doesn't get a head coaching gig where he could call plays. So I think if it's Davis Webb, he will be involved in play calling somehow. Otherwise, if we lose out on Davis Webb and they bring somebody else in, I think it'll be pretty much status quo.
Yeah, yeah. Should we talk about the injury just a little bit more? Because we have a lot of new viewers in here that
Mhm.
really don't know what's going on. So I just want to refresh your guys' memory. Now, for all of you who were in the stream initially, this won't be different news to you, but I'm sharing my screen right now. And ultimately, what it is Bo Nix had a press conference today. He himself went to the media at around 1 p.m. and said, "Hey, at around 3 o'clock, I'm going to talk to you guys." And from our understanding, this was not a planned press conference. From our understanding, this was Bo Nix being like, probably talking to the director of communications to the media team, being like, "All right, there's just a couple things that I want to clear up about this." And honestly, had Sean Payton not made those comments yesterday, I don't know if Bo Nix even has this level of I don't even know if he has this emergency presser or whatever. But ultimately, yeah. So basically, this was Bo Nix clapping back at Sean Payton for saying that this was a predisposed ankle injury, and then Bo Nix also saying that Sean shouldn't say how many injuries I've had because he actually doesn't know. Which, once again, I don't think that's true. But ultimately, I agree with him that you shouldn't put it out there, even if you do know. And yeah, ultimately, yeah, Columbus makes a good point here. This is why losing Davis Webb would suck, because he's the liaison between bad cop and good cop, between uh, your head coach and your quarterback. But yeah, once again, nobody's saying that there's bad blood between these guys, but you know what? It does matter. It does matter quite a bit. And I
Mhm.
talked about how, ultimately this is just a moniker and a representation of Sean and Bo's relationship, man. We know he likes to be coached hard. We see him yelling at Sean Payton when things go wrong. Sean, get the subs in or
Mhm.
whatever. Sean, wake up. We see Bo Nix yell at the sideline sometimes with all this stuff that happens. But yeah, you want to touch on what you thought just a little bit about it, just to refresh everybody's memory.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting. I mean, it was almost like watching like a Desperate Housewives episode or something. The wife has in the background some of that trash TV. But when you kind of look at it and you start to go back and view some of the things, I feel like ultimately what Bo Nix was really mad about was the fact that Sean Payton shared information, not necessarily shared incorrect information, just shared information to the public, because it could just add unnecessary pressure or have him answer unnecessary questions moving forward. Like if he's injury prone, or using the word predisposed, a lot of people think, oh, now moving forward, he might be predisposed, which is obviously not the case, um, potentially. And then the whole, you know, he also got upset about the saying, telling the media that he had 3 different surgeries on his ankle, and said, Bo just got done telling me that he had the same thing in high school and in college. And then he made a joke about how, what was it that, like if we had known that, we wouldn't have drafted you. Which again, I'm pretty sure he knew. I don't think the information that Sean Payton got from the doctor, or claims that he got from the doctor, is incorrect. That would just be
Mm.
incredibly irresponsible by Sean. I mean, you'd be able to debunk that right away. I think Bo Nix just coming out saying it was a simple procedure, 4 to 6 weeks. I think that's all true. Uh, while leaving out the whole predisposed thing, or he kind of said, nah, it's just a simple procedure. He didn't really deny it. Um, so I just think it's more like, why are you going out and kind of spreading my business? I'm the grown man. I can do that on my own, and leak it how I want. So that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, no, and you're 1,000%. Like, I think that part of the reason why Bo Nix did want to talk to the media today was because I think, like Sean Payton said, he wanted to inform the media about Bo Nix's injury. I think Bo Nix wanted to do the same thing here. I think Bo Nix wanted to clear the air and, be the one to tell the media about his injury, because ultimately he didn't get that chance. He didn't get that chance to do so. Yesterday, Sean Payton was telling the media about the injury, and you know what? For a coach that tried to be tight-lipped about his injuries this year, I can understand the frustration behind it because people would ask him about Dobbins, he'd be like, not going to say anything. People would ask him about Greenlaw throughout the year, he'd be like, not going to say anything. People would ask him about Surtain initially when it happened, he was like, not going to say anything. And you know what? I think he was a little. He just gets. How do I put this? He just gets a little trigger happy when he talks about his quarterback. He gets a little more eager to talk to the media about his quarterback, and ultimately, that's just the reality of the situation. But yeah, so I have people in here saying that they want to package him to Cincinnati for Burrow and Higgins and Chase. I'm just like, dude, what are we? All right. Like, this is not what we're trying to say. We're not trying to say that
Yeah.
they're going to trade Bo Nix. We're not going to
No.
like make this something bigger than it already is. But you know what? It's just really interesting because we didn't get a fair chance to listen in on it. So we are giving our thoughts about it because all these other
Yeah.
media members can.
Yeah, and if we really wanted to go there and say like, oh, is this fractured beyond repair, which I don't think it's even close to that. But like if there was a situation where you had to choose between Bo Nix and Sean Payton, I'm sorry. We can replace you, Sean, at this point. I'm still like now I'm rolling with Bo because you feel like you finally have your franchise quarterback. And that would be just shitty all around in general. So for what it's worth, that's how I feel. But yeah, I don't think it's anything more than just he wanted to clear the air. I'm happy. I'm really happy Bo did it just as a fan. I mean, even if there
Yeah.
wasn't the drama attached to it, like, because I kept thinking, could this be something that you worry about? Is this an injury prone type of situation if it's the same kind of recurring? And we knew we probably weren't going to hear from Bo Nix for God knows how long. So it's nice that he wanted to come out there and address it and kind of clear the air, which I think was really smart of him to do as well. And it'll be interesting the next time we hear from Sean Payton what he talks about this. I'm sure he'll just kind of try to make it seem like it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think
But
the next time we hear from Sean Payton, or the next time we have to hear from Sean Payton, like he is obligated to do so, is probably the owners' meetings. I think before free agency. I think late February, early March is the
mhm.
final time where we have to hear from our head coach. So that'll be really interesting. That'll be really interesting. And I know they didn't really say much at the owners meetings last year, but man, it's just once again, it's another really interesting dynamic. You see the head coach and the quarterback, you see how they like to operate, and you know what? Like Mark says, it's like an episode of Desperate Housewives or like some reality TV show where you get two heads clashing, but ultimately at the end of the day, you know, you know that's a funny comment. That's a funny comment. And Vic Chin also brings up a really good point. I think Bo is remarkably frustrated with the situation. I think, he said that it killed him to not be out there for the AFC
Yeah.
Championship. He said that it was like borderline, like torturous to watch it, not only for fans, but I don't even want to know how he felt after
Oh
the
yeah.
Stidham fumble. After the Stidham fumble, I don't even know who felt worse between Stidham and Bo, honestly. And I
Yeah.
can guarantee Stidham's going to think about that play for the rest of his life. But yeah, um, there's a lot of talk about Burrow in the chat. We're not even going to go there because it's not
No.
even worth mentioning. But
Speaking
yeah,
of injury
once
prone.
again, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, no, this is just something that we thought was interesting. This is something that we just wanted to get on and like talk to you guys about and just speculate because once again, we couldn't hear it. Broncos PR and communication representatives, we for whatever reason did not have the chance to listen in on it, and
Yeah.
we're just going
What the
off
hell
of
is that all
what's
about?
yeah, we're just going, which I'm still really mad about. Credential me, credential Mark, and you won't have to hear us complain about that. But yeah, um, you said it all year long. Broncos got more drama than a soap opera. I can promise you. I can promise you. If you think the Broncos have drama, just look at all these other teams in the
Yeah,
NFL.
I know,
I'm
dude. It's so
sorry.
funny.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the Bills, for example. Like you talk about drama. Like there's a lot of teams that have in-season drama, and if you just pay attention, you see it all the time. But I mean, the Bills took it to a whole new level for a team that's actually had, quite a bit of success over the last few years, given their franchise history. I mean, it was first thing I was thinking when I listened to Greg Penner's remarks today was like how amazing it is to have an owner that lets the football people discuss football, and he
Yeah.
just gives very clear takes. Speaking of him, did you get a chance to listen to Greg Penner's presser today?
Did not, but apparently he talked about the retractable roof, which is something I'm now very interested in after
Yes.
Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He basically like said that there's going to be a retractable roof, which I don't think was breaking news, but he did talk about it. He was asked, but it's funny because the reason I bring it up is because I heard some people talking about how they felt, and this could be one of those like, hindsight type of takes, but they said they felt like Greg Penner was a little bit irritated. He wasn't really in his normal happy mood. He's a little more serious during the press conference, and maybe it's because he knew about this drama between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. That could be a stretch, but I don't know if you had any kind of thoughts on that, and if that was the case, but I don't know.
I mean, I think he's above all else, he's probably just irritated that with the way the season ended. I think it's more of the fact that along the lines of Bo Nix that you didn't get to end your story the way you should have if you were the quarterback coming off of one of the best games of your career and one of the biggest moments of your career. I think it's just ultimately frustration. Obviously he knows what Sean means to this building, and he has given Sean every chance to do his own thing in Denver. Hey, you want to bring in your buddy from the Saints? Okay, to be like the assistant to the analyst to the whatever, then by all means, knock yourself out. So
Mhm.
I get it from Petter's perspective. Like he's probably just like, hey man, we give you every chance to do whatever you want here. You have free reign of this franchise. You have full control of this franchise, even more so than the GM. Like Shad,
Mhm.
I'm sure has final say over George Payton, and it should be that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I That's a little interesting. But yeah, no, Penner did seem a little more tense from the clip I did see about the retractable roof. Like I don't know, when you're talking about a retractable roof, it's pretty emotionless. I would say
Yeah.
it's like not something you could really take anything away from. But yeah, no, that is a little interesting that Penner was, not his usual self. And, talk about a guy who wasn't his usual self. Joe Lombardi, who said that they just wanted to make a move for the sake of making the move, or Sean was
Yeah.
just in the mood to switch things up. I mean, once again, offensive coordinator here, offensive coordinator here. Okay, I want to highlight this comment by Reginald Johnson. Peyton had a scapegoat and fired Lombardi over a bad fourth down call that cost them the game. First of all, Peyton's not scapegoating anybody here,
No.
okay, for
No.
firing Joe Lombardi. Listen, the reason he's not scapegoating anyone is because he went to the media. He said, man, I wish we called something else. And he took full responsibility and said, it starts with me. Uh, you know, we don't get to see what happens in the building, but offensive coordinator in Denver is not a real position. It just isn't. You're not involved with the. I'm sure. Yes, you are involved with the game planning, but once again, Mark said it. Davis Webb is your pass game coordinator. Zach Streif is your run game coordinator. So it's kind of like those "what does he even do" sort of situations, and that's an area where maybe Penner, maybe Sean, maybe George Payton are looking inward within the staff and being like, "Man, too much was on Sean's plate this year."
Yeah. And this is a take I've been seeing a lot, and it's usually from people that are like outside of the immediate like Broncos media or like the big hardcore fans like we are, which is understandable. But yeah, I mean, Sean took full responsibility for it. The Seth Wickersham article that came out, he kind of had the behind the scenes. Him and Sean are super close. He would never release an article without Sean's approval. Like, even doubled down on how much he regretted that fourth down call. And he's not going to pin the blame on anyone. And obviously, the Davis Webb situation, he's such a hot commodity right now. He's getting head coaching interviews, never called a play in a game. And he's obviously extremely smart and well liked. And it's not just like, it's not one of those where people in the building are saying that and just kind of trying to fluff feathers. Like, the NFL teams are wanting to talk to him. So that should tell you enough. And I think it's one of those where he probably was just sick of Joe Lombardi. Sometimes you need a fresh change and a fresh eyes on things, but mainly there's no way around it. Even if they denied this, it has to do with trying to have the best opportunity to retain Davis Webb, who's a very critical piece to this team. And obviously, him and Bo Nix have a really good relationship. So by him doing that, that's Sean Payton doing a favor for Bo also, of saying, this is your guy. We want to keep your guy around as long as we possibly can. And if, this is the move that it takes, it's that. But there's no way it's a scapegoating thing.
No, and
So
I'm
that's
trying.
kind of,
Yeah, yeah. No, and I'm trying to find this tweet right now. Um, there was a tweet, I forget who from. Okay. All right. I'm gonna share my screen one more time. And this did not come from a local media member. This came from a national media member who I could assume was pretty plugged in. Is that, we did not discover a lot from Joe Lombardi or from the Broncos firing Joe Lombardi, but we did discover a lot from this tweet from Ian Rappaport saying that, uh, Sean Payton wanted Brady as an offensive coordinator, perhaps even with play calling. Like that's the biggest thing you need to take
Mhm.
away from it here. And you know
Yep.
what? The Joe Brady thing, it doesn't matter that much. Like he's in Buffalo now. We don't really care. We can go down that rabbit hole if we want. But ultimately, I think, it symbolizes more than the Joe Lombardi firing because there is a chance that somebody else calls plays in Denver next year, and there is a chance that Sean Payton turns into a CEO type head coach, where you're like a college head coach, where you just let the offensive coordinator cook, you let the defensive coordinator cook, and that'd be completely fine. Like that'd be completely fine.
Yep.
Because Sean Payton is a above all else, he's just a great culture builder. Above all else, he entirely flipped things on their head here in Denver. And the offense still has basement floors, but it still has very high highs. So, you know what? Maybe it was better. Maybe it was better being like, all right, we have to do something about this. And you know what? People want to talk about Sean's ego. I think this is one of the most selfless things you can do. Going, being like, perhaps maybe I give up play calling for the first time as a head coach. He's been a head coach for it's going to be 20 years next year. He got hired in 2006 with the Saints after the hurricane, and he completely flipped them around. NFC Championship in the first year. And he's never, ever had his own staff where he didn't call plays, or he's never had an
Mhm.
operation where he was not the one calling plays. So, yes,
Yep.
he's amazing coach. But I think, the Penners are just kind of being like, you know what, something's got to change here. For all the highs you have, we have to figure out the low points of this team.
Mhm. No, no, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And obviously, he was mad about a few different things, right? I mean, firing the wide receivers coach, which I think made sense. And he said before they announced that he had talked about how it's about the way you catch the ball. Maybe he didn't like the technique, and then the cornerbacks coach with the repeated penalties and stuff, and from Riley Moss and some of the guys there. So it's those little things of like, man, he just wants to be able to get guys that he can trust a little bit more to where it takes a little bit off of his plate, which I think is normal. I like what Jason said here, and I'm glad that he brought up because I did want to get back to this point. He says he took it more as the doctor was saying that it was already injured and it was going to break at any time, but they could only tell when they went in to fix it. That's exactly what I think too. Like when you talk about predisposed, it was one of those. Think about Daniel Jones this year, right? Remember when you heard Daniel Jones has a hairline fracture in his fibula? Like they came out and they said that because they knew it. This is one of those situations where they probably just didn't know it with Bo. And then ultimately, what happened with Daniel Jones is did he tear his Achilles or did he break his fibula?
I think it was actually Achilles. I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
it was one of those where like it was related. Like he was obviously overcompensating. He ends up tearing the Achilles, but it could have ultimately broken. So same kind of thing. Predisposed means there was probably a hairline fracture there, and it was just a matter of time before it actually broke, unless he gave it time to fully heal. And they wouldn't have known that. And that kind of makes sense given how unserious the injury looked, like the play that it happened looked.
Yeah.
It didn't look like something that would fracture an ankle. Like it looked like it would maybe like sprain an ankle pretty bad. Um, and again, that's just off of looking at it. So that's something that I think obviously makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, Chef Jay Green says, could he have played if he was drugged up? No, two reasons.
Mm.
Medically, he would not have been cleared to play. He could not have been cleared to play because it was an ankle, and you don't want to mess with those. If you had played on a fractured bone in your ankle, you could suffer nerve loss and never walk again. Like it is that serious. Like you just
Yeah.
can't, you can't like mess with that. And could he have played? The other part is, could he have played? No, because we put him on IR. We put him on IR Saturday. So even if we had won this past game, it was going to be Stidham in the Super Bowl regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if we didn't put him on IR, I mean, not only all that, like, dude, you could break it so much worse. And that would be like such an irresponsible move. And what the hell? Like, let's be real. Bo Nix on one leg is not going to be better than Jarrett Stidham with two legs. It's just
No.
not going to be. I mean, yeah, and you talk about it like a Pat Mahomes type thing. That's a very different injury because you're talking about a high ankle sprain. And I'll try to. I'm not a doctor, obviously. I mean, I got my degree in this, so I'm not gonna like say this is true or not true. But from what you know about it, a high ankle sprain is with those you can manage it with pain. Like it's extremely uncomfortable, but you're not going to break your leg by trying to play on it. That's more of like toughing it out. But when you have a structural issue with a bone, there's not much that you can do. It's just not really physically possible. Um,
Yeah, no,
at that
and
point. So
there was also a comment up here by Mix Foam at 5:07 p.m. saying, "I heard Bo Nix was celebrating in the locker room and slipped on the concrete due to cleats and champagne at high elevation." I don't know what Bills fan put this out there on Twitter, but this has been getting too much steam in our chats, and I'm not going to say anything more about it ever. We heard about it on Horsepower Hour 2 weeks ago, and or I should say like 9 or 10 days ago, whenever we beat Buffalo. And ultimately, this is just bullshit because there was a report that Bo Nix or Sean Payton went to chest bump Bo Nix during the game, and then Bo Nix was like, hey man, be careful, be careful." So, uh, everybody that heard something like that, I'm just like, I just want to put that to rest because that is just that we can't acknowledge or we can't pass along false information.
yeah, it's insanity, dude. And it's one of those where like you really don't think that would come out if that was the case. Come on, and it was so obvious. Like you see the play, you see his reaction, um, you see him limping around. But you heard about the interaction with Sean chest bumping him, and he's like, "Oh, my ankle hurts." He's like, "Well, just watch this field goal go through." Like it's just asinine. It's crazy,
Yeah,
crazy stuff. Another example, RG3 Vic Chin says another really more recent example in terms of like making someone play when they shouldn't play this year also was Carson Wentz and what happened in Minnesota. And dude, I don't know if he's filed a grievance against them. He should, but he should not have been playing. And they said go out there and toughen it out, and he just messed up his shoulder even more. It was it was pretty bad. So
Jackson Dart too. You saw Brian Dable, go into the medical tent because he didn't want to watch Russell Wilson anymore. And he was like, "Come on, speed this up." And he got fined a lot of money. And the Giants literally got investigated because they were irresponsible with their injuries. So you can't be irresponsible with your injuries. But also, you go back to, yes, bottom line is we have a darn good coach and a darn good quarterback and a nasty team. Yes, we will be back 1000%. But also, you said that you don't think that fake thing would have come out if that actually happened, where Bo Nix actually broke his ankle by celebrating in the locker room. Okay. 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I remember it was 2019 when Fant was a rookie. I remember there was a report that Noah Fant got injured because he was cutting the tape off his ankle and he like accidentally cut his skin. Do you remember that? Do you
hmm
remember when
I
Noah
do.
Fant hurt himself? Like, so you don't
Yeah, he
think
gashed
that,
himself.
yeah, so you don't think a absolutely ridiculous injury like that would come out if it weren't
Yeah,
true? Like, come on.
nah, it's crazy. That's crazy to even think is true. So yeah. Um, what else? That coach ruined RG3. That coach was Mike Shanahan, by the way. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that, but
who has to wait another year to get in the Hall of Fame because they did not first ballot Bill Belichick, so probably not getting in until 2027.
mm-hmm. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, Bills fans are trolling. Um, yeah. So okay. Okay. So I thought he could have played at least a half of the AFC Championship game. No, it wouldn't have happened.
Nope, nope.
Wouldn't
He
have
wasn't
happened.
even
Yeah.
he
It was
wasn't
just
even
a super unfortunate end to a season, and even with all that, man, like this team was a bad fourth down decision and a field goal away, really, from going to the Super Bowl with a backup quarterback that played. So it's just crazy to think it was a wild season. Do you want to get into any more comments, or you want to talk a little bit maybe more about OC or defensive coordinator thoughts? I know we had some questions about Vance Joseph as well in here.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, unfortunately, it seems like you are going to lose Jim Leonard to the Buffalo Bills, or at least that's all the accounts right now. It hasn't been it's not officially out there or anything, but it seems like he is the favorite in house in Buffalo for that job. So, and I truly believed, I remember hearing Brett Coleman in 2024 during the offseason. I remember during, his review of the Broncos coaching staff, he's like, they probably have two dudes in house that are going to be head coaches at some point. He said
Hmm.
Davis Webb and Jim Leonard. Okay. So Jim Leonard, it's remarkable that you've made it this far in the cycle without him going elsewhere. And
Yeah.
I just don't think you're going to be able to go any longer, especially, with 10 head coach openings, 18 offensive coordinator openings. Okay. Success has never been more apparent in the NFL. And if you're a rising star and you have hot commodities on your staff, they're probably going to leave, and that's just the reality of the situation. But
Hmm.
so I think, the OC may have been just a pivot. It may have been a pivot to, we got to protect at least one of these guys in between Leonard and Webb. And by all accounts, Vance Joseph is not going to be getting that Arizona job. There's an outside chance, he's still within the running, but it seems like that's going to Mike LaFleur. So, you couldn't lose one of two. You couldn't lose one of two between Davis Webb and Jim Leonard. You just protect yourself from so much by not letting those guys leave. But
Yeah.
ultimately, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on potentially, opening up the door to Webb? It probably was independent of Leonard, potentially leaving. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you gotta explore all the options that you possibly can to retain a coach like him for as long as you can. I think it's extremely smart. Continuity is really important, and I mean, we lost a lot of guys on the offensive side last year. People forget Johnny Morton left to go to the Lions, which didn't really work out well for them. But he's somebody that could come back. We lost Declan Doyle, who's our tight ends coach, who's now the offensive coordinator for Ben Johnson, and he was getting a lot of like OC interviews with play calling and some head coaching buzz as well. So we lost a lot of guys, and I think they're anytime that you can maintain as much continuity on the offensive side of the ball, or really both sides of the ball, you got to be able to do it. And so yeah, I'm all about trying and doing whatever we can to be able to retain him for sure. In terms of Jim Leonard, man, I think it's going to be tough, really, really tough. But the good news is that at least looks like we still got Vance. And when I was looking at it, even looking at the call sheet odds for the Arizona job, Mike LaFleur's 61%, Clint Kubiak's at 12. I read another report that said it's between Mike LaFleur and Raheem Morris, and that was like an Arizona Cardinals column. So I don't. Yeah, I think the it's looking really bleak for Vance Joseph, which obviously unfortunate for him, but great news for the Broncos. And I think he's going to be smart too in terms of where he goes. Um, he's not just going to like take a job to take one. Like I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
the Baltimore, if he was legit like Baltimore or Pittsburgh, he would have jumped all over that 100%. It would have been easy for him had they wanted it. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. But it's interesting to go through some of the names. Like, do you have any names that you thought of? Maybe, let's say in a unfortunate world where we do lose Davis Webb for OC. Anybody that you kind of can think of that would make sense?
Mm, that's not necessarily that I've thought of that would make sense, but something that is interesting is Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. They're both from the Sean Payton tree, so I guarantee they got a lot of connections there. I guarantee you've got a lot of connections. You saw it with Johnny Morton. Okay, you saw it with Declan Doyle last offseason. He coached our tight ends in 2024. Somehow, after watching our tight ends in 2024, Ben Johnson hires him to be the offensive coordinator. Even though offensive coordinator is not a real position in Chicago, he still just said he wanted a man, we got a lot of people in here, and I don't want to potentially get this demonetized. I don't know. He wanted a film WH asterisk RE. Okay, that's the way I'll put it. He literally said he wanted a film. You know what? To be the offensive coordinator there. But yeah, no, you've actually thought of a lot of names. You should pull up that tweet you had because I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really good. Um, based on a couple names that you had for the offensive coordinator spot. As far as cornerbacks coach, I mean, I'm always interested in other old players that used to play for us. So it seems like I don't know. How would you feel about bringing a guy like Kayvon Webster in to be the secondary coach or something like that, or Omar Bolden or David Bruton? Man,
I mean, I always love bringing former players in. I think it's for positional jobs. I think it's awesome. I mean, imagine Akeem Talib coaching your secondary. Right? How cool would that be? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if he'd be a good coach, but man, he'd be fun as hell to watch. But yeah, so a couple names like this Nate Sheilhayes guy, Rams passing game offensive coordinator, or Rams passing game coordinator. He's getting tremendous buzz. He's still a young dude, and super fast riser. He was a finalist for the Browns job. Tons of experiences. Obviously, if you're coaching with Sean McVay, I trust that you're going to be pretty good. Don't know if he would come here unless Sean Payton gave him play calling duties, which I don't think that would happen. So that's one. Anthony Lynn was a really interesting one to me because Anthony Lynn, I don't know if the paths cross between him and Sean Payton, But given that Anthony Lynn's obviously extremely experienced, he's been a head coach, he's been a play calling offensive coordinator for a long time. Um, he could be a really interesting one. He has ties to the Broncos. I love what he does, like with every running game that he's been to, like every place he's been to, and he's been responsible for the run game. He's done a really good job, including stints in San Francisco when their a running back coach was going through some health issues. Bobby Turner, the legend Bobby Turner. So he would be an interesting name. And then there's like I tried to find other guys like Scotty Montgomery's a Lions guy. There's some ties between Dan Campbell, Declan Doyle, but again, I think you'd have to have him be a play caller. And then Ronald Curry's another one that, you know, now he's been with the Bills. He's now under Joe Brady. Joe Brady's got ties to Sean Payton. Ronald Curry coached with Sean Payton for many years. So those are just some guys too. But ultimately, I think the best situation for this team would be Davis Webb, in my opinion. I don't think there's much debate there, but those are some interesting names there nonetheless. Man, I'm at the point where I just want to figure out. I don't care who the hell the coordinator is. I don't care who's calling plays. I just want to figure out a way to be an effective running football team again because I'm so sick of not being able to run the ball, man. I
Yeah,
really am.
no, and I think, that's something that, Peyton and Streif had to work out. He said, Streif said that Peyton came into his office Monday, and not only I felt like the protection plan against the Patriots was horrendous. Okay, I thought the interior just got their butt whooped all day long, and I get it. Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, that's a very, very good interior, like probably amongst the best in the NFL. That being said, the protection plan was horrendous, but the run game has been horrendous all year long. And Joe Brady would have been great for getting this run game back on track. You see what Buffalo has done. They heavily emphasize tight ends. They want to build you know, their tight end room with Kincaid, Knox, and Hawes, and they just want to run you over. They have a very big offensive line. So Joe Brady would have been huge for that. But as far as play sequencing, it seemed like when things got tough in Buffalo, it was a whole lot of screen, run, figure out how to get Josh Allen to bail us out on third down. And we saw too much of that this year for our quarterback, okay? But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Everybody's saying that Talib as a quarterback's coach and Peyton as a quarterback's coach, that'd be fantastic. I think those guys like their downtime a little too much. Like I think Talib enjoys being a media presence, and I don't think they're willing to take a tenth of the money that they make in media to work 85 to 90 hours a week being a position coach and literally looking
Yeah.
for any way that they can get an edge in the NFL. So as much as I would absolutely love that, that'd be comical. Once again, like Todd Davis was a staffer in Denver this year. He was like a defensive whatever, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think he earned that or whatever because he had ties to Sean too. But wow, we've got the chat on fire. Chat's
Yeah.
on
It's on
fire.
fire.
Love
It's on
how
fire
many
right now, man.
how many live viewers do we have across all platforms?
I'm seeing 319, 336 right now, actually.
All right, so all 336 viewers out there, appreciate you. Mile high salute to
Yep.
y'all. Make sure you subscribe to Mark's channel, Marky Sports Denver, but my channel as well at Kodiak Broncos. And if you're following us
Yep.
on Twitter or if you're watching on Twitter, make sure you follow us on those platforms as well. But either way, this is just really interesting. We had some big news today about Bo Nix potentially being upset with Sean Payton and holding his own press conference to clear the air about Sean Payton potentially saying that this was a predisposed ankle injury and Bo Nix firing back and being like, no. But other than that, this has kind of turned into some coach talk. So make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments as well. A lot of people saying position coach is a pay cut. That might be interesting. Uh, I feel like you really, really, really got to love the game of football and really want to progress in the NFL as a coach for that to be your path and whatever. But as far as offensive coordinator, I mean, it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. And I think the bigger thing for me is not who the offensive coordinator is, but is if Sean Payton gives up play calling, because that is a real possibility. You haven't really said your thoughts about this season and how you felt about all the late subs, how you felt about, the lack of execution at times. And there was a lot of it. There was a lot of it, really until Dobbins went down. I think Dobbins went down sprang something, within Bo Nix and Sean Payton, and it's something like a light bulb went off there. So, what do you think about the operationally a lot of the stuff that was really poor this year?
Yeah, it was so frustrating, obviously. I mean, I know we talked about it a lot in real time, and I felt like it was one of those the way that I had described it at the time, I believe, was short-term pain for long-term gain. It was one of those where Sean was like, I know I'm putting a lot on you guys' plate. I know I'm doing a whole bunch of this. And eventually we're going to figure it out. And we were able to still win a lot of games. And it would be like in hopes that they could make a deep run. And in a crazy way, like he was right in a way. A lot of it got really cleaned up, which was good to see. Things seemed to be a lot better. And it really wasn't because we were subbing less or anything like that. So it seemed like the team really figured it out. But I think a lot of it, it's one of those things where, like, I don't know if there's a topic or a subject or just something in life that like you just have a lot of information on. Like I know for me, the only thing that I feel like I'm really smart in like in a lot of different ways is just sports related.
Me too. Me
Could
too.
be a blessing and a
The only
curse.
thing I'm good
But
at.
sometimes it's like you feel like you know so much, or there's so many things you want to say, and you have so many opinions about it that it's like it becomes convoluted. That's one thing I really noticed after starting a YouTube channel was like, man, it's hard to take all these thoughts that you have and put them into like a cohesive, organized video, unless I wanted to like really prepare, which I don't really much for these videos. I probably should. But it's so I feel like it's the same kind of thing with Sean, is it's like he knows so much and there's so many different things that he's seen and there's so much experience that he has that it's like you're overthinking everything at times. Whereas just being like, man, I know what works and I know what doesn't work. So I think it's just a result of that. But it got cleaned up. I just hope we don't see it again next year, because at this point you're going to have so many people from the core of the team returning that this should be something that gets absolutely cleaned up early on. But yeah, that's kind of my overall thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think, it was frustrating because the 2024 team was supposed to be the team that was messy. The 2024 team was supposed to be messy, and then it seems like in a lot of games, it felt like, especially on the offensive side of the ball, it felt like the execution was just so much cleaner last year with worse talent, and then what do? You go out, you get J.K. Dobbins, you go out and you get Evan Ingram, okay? So you try on the offensive side of the ball, okay? You use a second-round pick on R.J. Harvey. You use a third-round pick on Pat Bryant. And you have pretty much the same offensive line, four out of the same five starters that you've had going back to 2023, which was Sean Payton's first year. So this was the third straight year in the offensive line for four out of your five starters. Now you lose Powers, but still, your core guys, Miners, McGlinchey, Bowles, operationally, you had too many pre-snap penalties. You had too much just messy stuff. I think back to that Raiders Thursday night football game, and I wanted to die all 60 minutes just watching us. Okay. Even while the defense was on the field, it was hard for me to get excited about this. So, yeah, no, I get it. I get what you're saying. Like, the only thing I'm good at is football. The only thing I'm smart at is sports. And you know what? I could see Sean Payton being like, you know what? I'm good at this, but it's so hard when you have all these ideas and you're just trying to do a little too much. He was the one that put the expectations on the team. He was
Mhm.
the one that went out in June, July. It was like, I've coached 6 teams that I think could win a Super Bowl. 7, you guys are watching it right here. And there was a lot of pressure, and unfortunately, for a lot of the year, it was Vance Joseph's unit doing the heavy lifting. So that's just interesting to me. And obviously, Sean Payton has done wonders for this franchise. Obviously, Sean Payton has done amazing things for this franchise, but you see the flaws. The flaws are very clear. They're very apparent. They're very evident. Too much Troutman, too much Lil Jordan Humphrey, too much, just of these guys. And when you're running for 3 yards per carry and you build your skill position arsenal in the way that you do with great blockers and bad skill position and bad receivers, what's even the point?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And like it's weird because you've seen him in some situations where he's quick to adjust, he's quick to make decisions that he feels like it. But when it comes to like personnel, man, he's so like cautious to make any changes. Like if it's one of those things where like if you know that Adam Troutman is not really contributing anything positive, and we all saw your rant that you had. If not, it's all over Twitter, so I can go to Respect My Cozy. He has it there. But my thing is like he's so quick to make certain changes, but then there's also those moments that just drive you nuts. It's like, dude, Trauma's not really adding anything. Do we have a direct replacement that we feel confident in? Probably not, but at least let's find out, like at least let's see how it looks. But I also get that approach because it's like he doesn't want to make changes, that end up resulting in the Broncos like losing. Like, we won 12 straight games at one point this year. So things were obviously still working, but yeah, I mean, given an offseason to reflect and everything, I feel like you've got to be able to just bring in an influx of talent and bring in some guys that if you have a vision for them, they've got to at least be very good at that specific thing. Like if you want to sign a blocking tight end, I think I mentioned Charlie Kolar, for example. Great. We just got to make sure that he's good at blocking. I think fans are really reasonable. We're not going to sit there and expect that he's going to lift the tight end room from a production standpoint. But if you claim he's your blocking tight end, let him at least be really good at that. And that's been the problem is you have a lot of guys that are supposed to do something really well, but they haven't. And that's where it becomes really annoying. So hopefully maybe some new eyes and taking a little bit off of Sean Payton's plate can help. And let's not forget, I mean, the guy's 63 years old. Like, you don't sleep a lot during the year. Like, it's a big stress and big strain on your body. And hopefully he's coming to terms with the fact that, like, the less that he can worry about and in trust in other guys that he feel like can elevate, it's going to be a win-win across, across the board. So we'll see. It's going to be really interesting I think this offseason is going to be fascinating. And I think ultimately, even who we bring in as these replacement coaches is going to be huge.
Yeah, no, and let's not forget he's just 3 years removed from taking a gap year in the NFL. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I'm sure he enjoyed his time at Fox, but you know what? His competitive itch, I think it was just a little too big. I think it was just a little too big because you heard all those reports about him. I think even week 2, week 3, September 2022, you watch him on Coward, and he's just like, man, I miss being out there. The Saints and Bucks, they got into a fight, I think in week 2, 2022, and Sean Payton was like, man, that made me miss the game. It made me miss the
Mm-hmm.
game very heavily. But
For
yeah,
sure.
no, they need, it's going to be interesting because, you've mentioned it. Uh, for ad nauseum, as we've talked about all the problems on the offensive side of the ball, there are still some defensive side of the ball issues. And I think continuity and, how do I put this? Trust just matters a little too much with this coaching staff. Okay. Alex Singleton, love the dude. Fantastic story. I might actually get a Singleton jersey because
Mm-hmm.
of how much I love him. That being said, you cannot rely on him to be the same guy that he was for you this past year. Okay. I thought it was very puzzling that they didn't cut him this offseason. And man, he surpassed my expectations on the football field. And what a story
Mm-hmm.
coming back from cancer or whatever. And not only coming back from cancer, but playing the night before and then having cancer and only missing one game. That was absolutely nuts. But Sternad, I love Sternad too. And he had a phenomenal year. Sternad had a really, really great year, and I'm proud of him. There are a few players I'm more proud of than the ones who bounced back from poor play the year before, like Sternad and Locke. I thought those guys were crucial to this team, but trust just went way too far with this coaching staff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why not see what you have in some of your other dudes? I mean, Marvin Mims, he could be, I've said this before, he could be on his deathbed and Sean Payton will be through the loudspeaker. We need to figure out more ways to get you the football.
Yeah.
He goes to the podium 5 to 6 times a year and says, we're going to get Marvin the football a little more. And it took 2 injuries at the wide receiver room for him to get that chance. And what does he do? He comes up big in the biggest game we've had in I don't know how long in our organization's history. So, yeah, it's just I feel like they just get these visions, and sometimes it often doesn't work out, and sometimes it does work out. But you know what? You said it best. You're capping your ceiling if you bring back guys like Singleton. You're capping your
Yep.
ceiling if you bring back guys like Sternad because you saw what the linebacker play looked like this past year with those guys. And I don't see any reason why it would be any different based on what we've seen. I don't see why it'd be any different operationally. I don't see why it'd be any different as far as, you know what? Okay, maybe I should give this other guy a chance. Because ultimately continuity and trust, it goes far with this coaching staff and it doesn't mean nothing, but sometimes it goes too far.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you need the what if, on your rosters. I think in a way, like, that's what I was saying. I even heard it again on Sports Radio. I think on the Fan, they were talking about it. They were like, you've got to bring back at least Sternad or Singleton. I mean, you have to, given there's so much unknown outside of Greenlaw, and even with Greenlaw, there's a lot of unknown. And it's like, no, you don't though.
No, you
Like
don't.
you don't because the known is not good enough. The known is just it's just limiting where you can reach. Like, I would rather go into the season with like Lavelle Bailey and I can't say I would rather, but I'd be a lot more intrigued by going in the season with Lavelle Bailey and Dre Greenlaw starting, because at least you're like, I don't know how good it could be. It could be a disaster, or it could be really, really good. And that's why so many people are still fascinated with Drew Sanders. Like, we always joke about, he's like the guy we talk about the most that we also forget exists, because he's got a lot of talent. So you at least hope to see that through. And again, I think you said it well with Cernat and Singleton. Like, they performed admirably. I love the leadership traits and all of that, but you're just capping your room. Same thing. I'm argument I made with Sutton. Like, I love Sutton. He's been a great guy. He's no diva. He's a team first dude. But if he's going to be your wide receiver one, you are limiting the ceiling of your wide receivers. You are never going to actually see the true potential, because he doesn't have a ceiling. Like, if you said Pat Bryant's going to be your wide receiver one, you could say, damn, the sky could be the limit, or there could be a limit on it. But you have to figure that out at some point. And so that's why for me, it's like, no, you need to have a change at tight end, completely revamp the room. And you got to have a change at inside linebacker and completely revamp the room. Because this team is very good, like we said. And I'm very confident that they could be Super Bowl contenders next year. And I know that, I feel like for sure that they will. But I feel like also we have a lot of really good players, but we don't have top-end elite talent. And I think it's time that we start bringing in, or trying to find guys that are top-end elite talent.
I mean, it just goes back to what I say a lot. Like, you are not seeing the consequences of the Russell Wilson trade on the defensive side of the ball. Like, you have Benito, you have PS2, who, game's best corner. You have Hufanga, premier safety, who proved to be good. And even your depth, oh my God, Chris Abrams-Drain, whenever he steps in, we don't miss a beat. Like, the
Yeah.
talent on that room is crazy. Q Robinson, holy cow. He just
Yeah.
gets in there, and all he does is he just makes plays. He gets big sacks on Patrick Mahomes. He gets big sacks on Drake May. So your depth on the defensive side of the ball, well, besides linebacker, is completely set. But you are seeing the effects of, the Russell Wilson trade and the dead cap, and ultimately being down a lot of draft picks on the offensive side of the ball. Okay, because there was a limit as far as how your skill position guys did. J.K. Dobbins went down, and your entire run game just completely collapsed. Okay. And you had somebody else sign J.K. Dobbins in May, when 31 other teams had the opportunity to do so, what would it have looked like? And I think, that's the part that makes me go like, oh, damn. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, what would it have looked like? And you know what?
Yeah.
Even your guys on the offensive side of the ball, when you get them the football, or when you just don't give them that many chances, like Marvin Mims. Okay, we already mentioned took too many injuries to show out. Evan Ingram, there's a chance he could be washed. I don't think he magically forgot how to play tight end overnight, but you made a big deal about going out and getting him. So ultimately, you have to bear the responsibility of the lack of production that you got this
Mm-hmm.
year. Whether it's fair or
Yep.
not, you know what? He didn't produce. I don't put that on him. I put that on the coaching staff for putting those expectations on him. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, I think we do have top end talent, but it's on the defensive side of the ball. It's just not on offense. So you have a full offseason to potentially do it on the offensive side of the ball. And let's talk about Jade Barron for a little bit, because I know that you're kind of pushing back on a lot of the stuff that's been out there about, was this a wasted pick? Was this he got 5 snaps at the AFC Championship? But since we have so many people tuned in right now, I want to give you the floor to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to look at like draft picks on a game by game basis, right? Um, and that's something that I think is kind of a flawed thing to do, because yes, you can look at it and say, man, it sure would have been nice to have Travion Henderson or Omarion Hampton in the AFC Championship game, or it would have been nice to have insert whatever other player. And like, while that might be true, you also got to look at it like, dude, we're building out like we have cores on our team that I think make our team so successful. Like, our offensive line and our defensive line are top units in the NFL, or up there, top 3 units on both sides. When you have that, you're going to win a lot of football games, and it makes building out everything else really, really simple. And so my whole thing is like, you got to look at Jade Barron as somebody that in 2 or 3 years from now could be elite. He could be an all-pro level type of a player. Obviously, we don't know that, but he definitely could be. And so you look at this offseason, man, there could very well be a situation where the Broncos say, you know what? We got to get Jade to play more. And I think there's 2 big possibilities. One is you can move him to safety. You could take over for Brandon Jones, who could be a cap casualty. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying. And I don't like that move in general. Or you can look and say, man, a team comes to you and say they need a corner because teams are always cornerback starved, and they want to make a move for Riley Moss, and you get a good offer for Riley Moss. Well, now you have an easy plug and play replacement for that, and you can take advantage of the draft pick that you got for it, and you could raise the floor of that room exponentially even. And I thought Riley Moss played really well this year, but now you could potentially have PS2 and Barron who could be unbelievably shutdowns, and you could raise the room of the team. So my whole thing is like, yeah, I get it. It might have been frustrating for this year, but you can't really judge draft picks until 2 or 3 years out at least, because it's such a fluid year. So many things happen. God forbid you get an injury. You want to be able to have a guy that can step in and perform and play really well. So I think when you talk about getting as much of an influx of talent, like I'm all for that, and I don't think it's fair to say he's a wasted pick yet at all. I just think it's one of those where he got drafted in his first season into a little bit of an unfortunate situation for him because we're so good there, but that doesn't mean that he's can't ultimately raise the floor overall.
Yeah, no, I think everything you said is right. And Barron, he's handled it like a pro. Like I was really
Mhm.
proud of the way he handled it on Monday at the media. And he's done this before. He's dealt with this before in his career. His introductory press conference here in Denver, he literally said, "Man, I went to Texas. I wanted to be three and done. I wanted to be three and done, but unfortunately, that's not the way it turned out." Then in the fourth year, his senior year, he ended up winning the Jim Thorpe Award. So that's pretty
Mhm.
interesting. But yeah, I've said it a lot. Like I don't. I think I'm just really frustrated at the lack of immediate results from our first round pick when it was clear that we were entering a window. And I think that's completely fair to be, like, what was the plan for this guy? Okay. I know that we saw somebody here said Trevion Henderson on the other side of the game. How much did he do in the championship game? He didn't do shit. And that's just the reality of the situation. We saw him on the other side of the field. He didn't do anything. So it's no guarantee that any of these guys would have been
Yeah, of course.
like better for that AFC Championship game. But uh, yeah, ultimately, it's just really unfortunate. I do think this year though that the Broncos they need to get a little bit more serious about getting immediate contributions from their rookies. Okay, Xavier Jones, I get it. Q Robinson, I get it because those guys were drafted into really deep rooms, and that's completely fine. But you had a full offseason, with an arsenal of picks, with an arsenal of cap space, and the skill position room. It just ran out of gas at the end of the year, and you had guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey getting a 74% snap share in the AFC Championship game. Now, once again, I'm not like super mad at the organization for that. But at the end of the day, you just need to take it a little bit more seriously this offseason
Mhm.
because you need to take the bad parts of the team more seriously, okay? Because we have a lot of the same needs this year on our team that we had last year. And unfortunately,
Mhm.
I just think a lot of people are uh, disappointed with the lack of aggression there. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think that, when the way it's clear that the way that George and Sean Payton view the NFL draft is it's a future play. It's a BPA. That's kind of how they've always done it. I mean, obviously, except for with when you're drafting a quarterback in the first round, it's different, but it's always about what's the vision and what are you going to look like a few years out. And whether we agree with that as being the right move or not is kind of irrelevant because that's how they've always operated. And you can always judge it later, but I think this year, but it's also hard. It's easy to say like we need to draft for immediate need and have these guys play right away, but you don't know who the hell is going to be available, right? Like we all thought we'd have a chance at one point at Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland or Emeka Ibuka. Those are three guys that I really loved that I felt like could elevate this room, and none of them were available. None of them were there. But getting back to the point, like you also don't know the ripple effects that someone like a draft pick like Ajay Barron could have, right? Because he easily it put Jaquan McMillan on notice. It could have put Riley Moss on notice. Those guys' games got elevated. So in a way, it could have been a really good move for them. But you mentioned Savion Jones, right? Yes, he wasn't a first round pick, and first round pick always get a lot more um, pressure on them. But if we lose JFM, which I think we will, and Savion Jones steps up and he ends up balling, people are going to say, what a great pick. No one was saying Riley Moss was a bust because he redshirted his first year, and then all of a sudden, year two, he's a starter, right? You can go down the list of a bunch of different guys that were like that, that ended up being big time contributors at some point, and you're like, oh yeah, that was really worth it. Nick Bonito, A lot of people were like, Nick Benito's a bust. He was a second round pick. Nick Benito's a bust. He only got 1 sack his rookie year, and now he's one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL. So a lot of these things are fluid, but I also do understand the frustration of it, and I'm wholeheartedly with you, man. Like, we need to be able to find as much top end talent as we can, but top end talent is usually known, like it's going to work well in the NFL with free agents, which you're going to have to pay a lot of money for. But like Jalen Waddle, if we traded for Jalen Waddle, like the kind of player that you're getting, right? If we sign Alec Pierce, we know the kind of receiver that we would be getting, or George Pickens. So in those areas, like if you feel like, man, we have to upgrade at tight end, which is an extremely hard position to upgrade at. Usually you could do that with free agents because you know what you're going to be getting with those guys. The draft there's always going to be speculation. There was so many people that now were like, oh yeah, Omarion Hampton would have been a much better pick, and then they just like completely forget the fact that like he missed most of the season and like looked good for a few games. Like they weren't saying that in October or November. So it's all just, I look at it like a one by one thing. But yeah, I mean, we need to be able to be at least a little bit more open to the idea of rookie starting right away.
Yeah,
Like
no, and we're
a big
conservative
fear
with
that
it.
I have is that like we make an aggressive move and we go up and we get Kenyon Sadiq, which I think everyone consensus is that he's the best tight end in this draft. And you're like all fired up for it, and then he barely plays because they don't trust rookies to play a lot in those types of roles. And like that's what would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll see.
I feel like offensively that wouldn't be too much different than what you saw with Barron, but at least with Barron you could be like, all right, whatever, stacked room. And let's talk about, Jaquan McMillan, man, holy cow! Like a lot of people at the time of the Barron pick were just like, well, it made sense because J Mac wasn't actually that good last year. I'm just like, no, no, no. I pushed back on that. I was like, guys, that is a huge cop out. And not only did Jaquan McMillan uh, have continue to have success, but he ascended. He ascended in
No,
a
big time.
big way that
Yeah.
he didn't have that year. So, I know a lot of people were talking about that as well. But, pre-draft, I didn't see y'all talking about nickel. Pre-draft, I didn't see you guys talking about, nickel could be a place where this team upgrades. And then we take Barron, and then, I don't know. It's just, full disclosure, if I was turning in the card at 20, I would have taken Derek Harmon. But how much would he have played this year? He probably
Exactly.
wouldn't have.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. He
Yep.
probably
He wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have
played
gotten
much
that
at all.
much time at all. But yeah, no, I get the immediate frustration. And also, tight ends, you're forgetting that this is one of the positions that is A, the hardest to evaluate, and two, first round tight end lately, like just going in the past decade, for the most part, has not been worth it at all for the teams that take the tight ends there. And also, it's a position that is so hard to translate to the NFL because the production doesn't come right away. Okay. It's one of those that's a little bit more than just go out there and run routes. All right. And you know what? If we were to go the route with Sadiq, where we trade up for him and he doesn't play a whole lot, I would absolutely lose my mind because at least with guys like Barrett, you were just like, whatever, stacked room. But if you can't get on the field and we run it back with Troutman and Kroll, like that would just piss me off a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. That would drive me crazy. And yeah, dude, I was looking at a few different tight ends today in the draft, and it is hard, man, because what they're asked to do in college is so much different than in the
Mhm.
NFL. And I genuinely understand. Like I know why. It's not just a Sean Payton thing. Like really 90% of the coaches in the NFL, they expect for their tight ends to at least be able to block to a degree. And I get why, because you're way too much of a tell if you're just going out there and you're not going to be a blocker. They know you're going to pass the ball, or it makes it a little bit easier for defenses to defend it. It only really works like Kenyon Sadiq would work on the Broncos if we had two very, very, maybe even three very good or solid pass blocking tight ends, but we don't, So, but it's so hard to evaluate it because like there's some guys in college. Like I was looking at Sam Roush today from Stanford, and you can tell like he's not the best blocker. He's pretty damn good, but he loves to block. But then you don't really see the kind of upside that he has as a pass catcher because you haven't seen it. I mean, it's like the George Kittle effect. He was a 5th-round pick, and they drafted him to be a blocker, and he ended up being like a freak of a receiver. So it's really, really difficult to be able to know what's going to happen. And then you got to add in that it's a very complicated position, and it gets even more complicated in the NFL Whereas in college, it's like just go out, run this route, and beat your guy. Now you have to understand protections. You have to understand who's the hot. You have to know, when to be able to kind of like block guys and release and all the different mental aspects of it. So it's hard, but that's why I think the Broncos need to make most of their noise uh, in free agency this year, or via trades or something, and then you could just take BPA at whatever position in the draft.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And also, I've noticed that too when I'm watching these tight ends. And it's really hard to evaluate them because obviously in college you have wider formations because the wider hashes. So it's just a little more interesting. But even then, I'm just like, dang, I don't really know what I'm looking at. But then you factor in all that, okay, like what was this guy's, role as a blocker in his offense? Some guys are just a flat out tough eval. And then you get to the Michael Triggs of the world that you're just like, man, he looks good, but he got kicked off of 2 teams and he got suspended a bunch. And you're just like, how do we factor that into our equation? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a really interesting discussion. But you know what? We've got a lot. I'm excited for the offseason. If you could tell, we're excited for the offseason. I mean, you had a really interesting take about Pitts, so I think you should share that.
Well, I put it up for you because I know you were like, dude, Sean Payton would hate Kyle Pitts. So like, what are
Yeah,
your thoughts about Kyle Pitts?
Sean Payton would hate Pitts because he doesn't block. Okay, not to
No.
say that I don't think he's averse to it, but talk about a guy that would absolutely hate Sean Payton. If you go out and you sign Evan Ingram to a deal and you don't really utilize him, whatever. But Sean Payton would much rather have a guy with great blocking skills and bad receiving skills out there at the tight end room, which philosophically, I think that just needs to change. Like, I get it. Tight ends, you can't deploy them like you do in Madden, where, you literally just get receiving tight ends. But at the end of the day, man, something philosophically needs to change. Too much Troutman, too much Adkins, too much of all those guys in this offense lately. Lucas Kroll, receiving tight end who doesn't receive. So, but yeah, no, Sean Payton would absolutely hate Kyle Pitts. Like, I would just be scared because we've shown we can't make the F tight end / slot hybrid work in this offense. Maybe Ingram just is washed, but I just don't think it's going to be worth the cost.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Pitts is like an elite receiving tight end, but like from a blocking standpoint, Evan Ingram looks like an elite blocker compared to what Kyle Pitts is. But again, like this is one of those situations where if you're good with blocking tight ends, with the blocking tight ends that you have, and you can just say, hey, Pitts, go out there and win, he'll fit. I just don't think he fits in Sean Payton's offense. And it's annoying, but it's very important that we at least recognize the fact that like it is what it is. There's a lot of things that Sean Payton has shown that it doesn't really matter how we feel about it. Like I could disagree with it, but you just have to take it at face value and say like it just is what it is. Like blocking is a non-negotiable for the Z wide receiver and for really any tight end. The problem that we both shared all the time is that your blocking tight ends can't block, and just like you said, your receiving tight ends don't receive. So it's like, what the hell are you guys even doing then?
Yeah,
Find
so
guys
like
that can at least do that.
yeah, so you're not fast, you can't catch, you can't block. What is the point of being on an NFL field? Like, literally, when
Yeah.
especially when, like, I got it when Dobbins was good and the run game was turning along. But once again, there just seems to be a huge personnel disconnect
Yeah.
between the front office and the coaching staff. But yeah, wow, man. It's been an hour and 23 minutes. That just flew
Yeah,
by.
that's crazy. I know I was wanting to wrap up a little bit ago, but this is always a good time. But Kodiak,
Wow.
thanks for joining, man. Let's do this more often, especially in the off season. But everybody in the chat, you guys are dope. You guys were so much fun. Be sure to, like Kodiak said, uh, subscribe to the channels, comment on the videos, hit us up on social medias. That we love to interact with all you guys for sure. And anything that you're cooking up or you're working on for Bronco fan to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on this 2025 season lately. So I did put out a video today about, my top 5 favorite games of this season. And I'm also going to put out something like, probably, I don't know how to word it, like top 5 players I'm most proud of this season, where I talk about, the guys who uh, I'm honestly just most proud of this season. I'll look back and I'll find something to reflect on the year. But yeah, anything you're cooking up?
No, man, I'm gonna start getting into a lot more draft stuff. I do have a draft channel that I just started. It's NFL Mark Draft. Mark is spelled with a C. So you can check that out. But I really want to start. I mean, I love the off season. I love the draft a lot, and so focusing a little bit on that. But yeah, obviously we'll cover any of the latest Broncos news as well, like the Georgian Bo drama that we got today. So
Yeah.
always
I
having a good
also
time.
I also did put up a Madden rebuild. If you guys want to hear my amazing voice for an hour and 20 minutes, my last name is Lang. So if you type in Langy on YouTube, Langy on YouTube, then you'll watch me play Madden. And I want to start getting into that too.
I love it. Maybe I'll challenge you to a game and see how badly you whoop my ass.
I'm sure you're great.
Nah, I do love playing Madden, but I'm not very good at it.
I like college football more, but I think I've started to play Madden more lately, and it's
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. No doubt. Well, appreciate it, my brother. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks everybody in the chat. Go Broncos as always, man. And we'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.